Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today our portion is called Yitro. This week I listened to an Orthodox Jewish podcaster in Israel who said, now that there are no more hostages in Gaza, the political left in Israel is once again growing louder, calling for moving on and showing compassion without confronting the reality of what happened on October the 7th. So in essence, he says, we're being asked to forget the nature of the evil that attacked us and enable it to invade us again in the future. He played a video showing people from Gaza of all ages, including an elderly man almost running with a cane, breaking across the barrier into Israel that day to help Hamas with the kidnapping, torture, and murder of men, women, and children. It reminded me of all those who collaborated with the Germans during the last war and who were, in most cases, even more vicious than the Germans. Evil is not new. When Amalek attacked the most vulnerable of those escaping from Egypt, the fullness of evil was displayed. God told Moses, "Write this for a memorial in the book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." Parashat Bo ended with, "The Almighty will wage war with Amalek from generation to generation." God's promise to blot out Amalek has yet to be fulfilled. But this issue is a double-sided coin. We have evil on one side and good on the other. And God created both. He created good and he created evil. In fact, in Deuteronomy 13:19, he told us, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that I have set before you life and death, a blessing and a curse. So choose life, that you and your offspring may live." And then he gave us the formula for how to choose life. In verse 20, love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, cling to him, for that is your life and your length of days, so that you may dwell in the land that God swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When I read that word dwell, in Hebrew it's lashevet. After a long day, when we come home after work and we sit down, we rest. Ani yoshev, or ani yoshevet. I'm sitting down. It's like a relief, so that you may dwell in the land. That was God's promise to us for choosing life. Now, what would have happened if Israel's first king, Saul, had obeyed the prophet Samuel, who told him to completely destroy the Amalekites? Men, women, children, even the animals. But Saul, like most people, and especially those on the left, believed that he knew better than God. Even if he had wiped out the physical Amalek, would evil have arisen from another place? The battle between good and evil is not physical, it's spiritual. And if God created evil, he had a reason. Why and when did Amalek appear? In Exodus, Shmot 17, verse 7, we read, "The name of the place was Massah, which means striving, and Meribah, testing, because of the striving of the children of Israel, and because they tested God, saying, 'Is God among us or not?'" What immediately follows are four powerful words. And then came Amalek. When terrible things happen to us, we always cry out, "Where was God?" It's in our nature to blame God or someone else for whatever happens to us. We've been doing that since Adam and Eve. Did the Greeks just suddenly appear to wake up the Maccabees? Did Hitler just suddenly appear to wake up the world and allow the nation of Israel to be reborn? It seems like the rise of evil always precedes the impetus that arouses the good and calls people back to their Creator. His promise to utterly destroy Amalek still stands. Humanity is in the midst of another holy war, this time with Islamic fanaticism against Judaism, Christianity, and just about everyone else, including those within its own ranks. The gods of the world are at war with the God of Israel. And he has raised up an unlikely hero, President Donald J. Trump, who is standing in the gap in the same way that he raised Darius, king of Persia, who provided Nehemiah with whatever he needed to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. With that in mind, after God said that he would be at war with Amalek throughout the ages, suddenly Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, appears. Exodus 18 verses 8 to 9 say, Moses told Yitro, his father-in-law, all that God had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and Yitro rejoiced for all the goodness that God had done for Israel. And he prayed, Blessed be Yud-He-Vav-He, the God who has delivered you. I know that Yehovah is greater than all the gods. You know, I see President Trump as a man who has opened the way for all those non-native born Israelites like Yitro to rejoice in all the good done for Israel. He's not a perfect man, but President Trump is the first president to keep his word about moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognizing it as its capital, Israel's capital. But his formula for peace is not God's formula. I found it very interesting that God chose to introduce his formula for peace, the Ten Commandments, his covenant of peace, in this parasha, Yitro, a Midianite Cohen, a Gentile priest, rather than in Leviticus when he formed the Hebrew priesthood. This spoke volumes to me. It's like he's telling us Jews, don't put being Jewish on a pedestal or tout, I'm proud to be a Jew, as having more value than trusting in the God of the Jews. The Torah teaches us that God separated Israel from all the other nations for the purpose of being a light to them, a light to the nations. And in this parasha, the elders of Israel said to Moses, all that you say we will do. We made an oath, which doesn't have an expiry date, just like God's war against Amalek. We are responsible for being the example that Yitro spoke of when he told Moses to choose men who fear God, men of truth, who hate unjust gain, who would rule over the people with him. It would be our mandate to introduce our God to the rest of the nations in order to hear them say what Yitro said. Now I know that Yud-He-Vav-He is greater than all the other gods. Let's not be so arrogant that we think we can know the mind of God. Let's not put words in his mouth or cover his face with our own, as he warned us about in the very first commandment. You know, we read in this congregation every Shabbat during our service the Ten Commandments. But for the sake of those who are not with us enjoying our service on Shabbat, allow me to please read them to you now. It would be so good for us to remember them, to memorize them, so that we can use them as a basis for judging everything we do and knowing right from wrong. They're all we need. And the entire Bible, the scriptures, the Tanakh, describes what happens to us when we keep them and when we don't. So the first commandment, I am. Now, I just want to say that I spoke to a friend of mine who is in Israel, and I asked her, how do you pronounce Yud He Vav He? And she said, well, in Israel, they're pronouncing it Yehovah. So allow me to say Yehovah. I am Yehovah, the Almighty God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. They used to say, you shall have no other gods. But literally, it's saying, you shall not cover my face over with the face of any other gods. Also, all religions omit who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. This gives them the right to exchange the one true God, Yehovah, with their own. The second commandment, do not make for yourselves any image, any likeness what's in heaven above or on the earth below, in the waters under the earth, to not bow down to them. It's not that we can't make an image or make a beautiful painting of God's creation, but we do not bow down to worship them. For I, the Almighty God, am a jealous God. I visit the iniquity, the guilt of the parents upon the children. Now listen to this. To the third and fourth generations of those who reject me, that's a very limited period of time to those who are rejecting them, but showing mercy, chesed, kindness, to the thousandth generation, which means for eternity, to those who love me and keep my commandments. This gives me so much hope that it's just a limited period of time for those until we turn back to God, and then we can enjoy His loving kindness in our families forever. The third commandment, do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for He, the Lord, will not hold him guiltless who takes His name in vain. In other words, do not allow God's words to be made null and void by replacing them with our own words. That is how we form a religion. We replace His words with ours, but it's not a relationship. Now, these first three commandments speak about our relationship with our God. The next two have to do with loving ourselves. The fourth is keeping the Shabbat day. We have 6 days to labor and to do all our work. But the seventh is a Shabbat of your Almighty God. Do not do any work in it. Not your children, not your servants, not your animals, and not the ger, the stranger who is in your gates. Yitro was the ger among us. Because God gave us 6 days and He made the heavens and the earth, and He rested on the seventh day and He set it apart. You know, slaves had to work 7 days a week. They had no free will. But now we do. We are set free and we can rest. And no religion and no individual has the right to re-enslave us. God gave the Shabbat to every human being, even the animals, for our good. And the fifth commandment, honor your father and your mother, that you may dwell, rest long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You know, our parents may not be perfect. I am far from perfect. I made so many mistakes as a parent. But the Torah says that our parents deserve honor simply because we gave our children life. And when we keep those two, we are loving ourselves. Now, the last 6, from 6 to 10, are about how we are to treat our neighbor, our fellow man. Do not murder them. Do not premeditate and murder your neighbor. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not lie by tearing down the character of your neighbor. And do not covet. In other words, do not do anything you can to get your neighbor's house, his wife, his male or female servant, his animals, anything that belongs to your neighbor. And how do we sum it up? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, Moses listened to the advice of his father-in-law, a Gentile priest, who wasn't afraid to tell him, what you are doing is not good. Even great leaders need advisors to tell them the truth, and who are men of principle. Yitro told Moses in Exodus 18, verse 19, listen to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Represent the people before God, and bring the causes to God, and you shall teach them the ordinances, the chukim, and the Torah, and shall show them the way, haderech, in which they must walk, that's halacha, and the work they must do. Here, a Gentile priest is advising Moses, the greatest and most humble of servants, who heard God's voice, on how best to represent God to the people. And Moses listened. Wow. But who are we listening to today? How can we find truth in this madness that's taking place in our world? All we see is chaos that causes fear and anxiety and anger and mistrust and every other emotion that follows when we open the door to anything goes. We can choose to believe anything other than God's wisdom. But let's not complain when we suffer the consequences of our foolishness. I was born in the late 40s, after the last Great War. And when I went to school in the 50s, we read the Bible, and we learned the Golden Rule and the Ten Commandments. Do you know that crime has multiplied exponentially from the 60s till today, after the Bible was removed from the public school system? And in the private school system, religious traditions were emphasized over God's written Torah, leaving our kids or those who graduated spiritually empty. And this has led many of us to seek spirituality in all the wrong places. But I was so happy this week when I saw a video that showed pillars inscribed with the Ten Commandments being raised in various locations around the U.S., in front of the courthouses, in several cities in Texas, in Florida, in Georgia, and in Indiana. Isn't it time to bring God's original, without changing any of its words or leaving them out, God's original 10 Commandments back into our homes, into our schools, our courthouses, and into our lives? I know that no one can change the heart of man except God. But what we can do is our small part by being a living example of God's commandments in our own circles of influence, whether they be tens, hundreds, or thousands. That's the least we can do while God is raising up his army of warriors for the final defeat of the spirit of Amalek. Shabbat Shalom. When I hear, by the way, Miriam, thank you for sending me, you've been sending me a lot of little short videos about Chinese Jews, Black Jews, really Jews from all over the world. And, I was born in a Jewish family. My great-grandparents, as far back as I know, were Jews. Some were, the earliest ones that I remember were basically conservative. They weren't Orthodox. And the further we went down into generations before mine, we had just about lost all of our Judaism. We knew we were Jews ethnically, but, when I hear the words, I'm proud to be a Jew, my first reaction is, what are you proud of? How could you be proud of something you're born into? You didn't choose it. You're born into it. There's nothing about it to be proud. We're not better than others. We're not smarter than others, or they accuse us of being richer than others, or controlling the world. And the Torah is teaching us that we were simply separated. There's no doubt that Israel has a role. And Yitro was very clear telling Moses what the role was. He was the one who told him that he had to obey his role, to do what he was supposed to do, not to stand from morning to night, but allow others to help him. And but look at the men that he had to choose. Men who really were men of truth, who didn't want to be bribed, couldn't unjust gain, I think he called it, but people who would be a living, walking example of what? What? I've searched through many religions and they all have their ideologies. Our ideology, the only thing written in stone are the Ten Commandments. These words contain so much wisdom. When we read, the Proverbs, when we read the Psalms, when we read some of the other books, we see these commandments as a formula to be followed in order to give us that wisdom. How would I know how to love my neighbor as myself if God hadn't put that in my heart and taught me how to do it? And so it's so important for us to not, as I said, tout, look at me, I'm Jewish. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fight all our enemies and I'm going to be able to kill everybody because I have a stronger army. That's not what God is teaching us. And he's not he's teaching us, listen to me, obey my words, obey my voice, obey the plumb line, the formula that I gave you so that I can learn to love myself, because if I don't learn to love myself, I cannot love anyone else. And I am grateful for those in this community, to you, Miriam, for all the times that you've said to me, what you're doing is not good, just like Yitro said to Moses. Or when I can turn to you, Mauricio, when I just don't know how to make a decision and I don't know what to do about something. We have people here who have a true desire to follow the living God, to want to be with him, and we are so imperfect. And that to me is the bottom line for everything. And I love, that word in Hebrew that I said, so you will dwell in the land. That's a little bit of what you said, Miriam, this week when you said you had that feeling when you watched your brother leave, that he was finally at rest, finally at peace. Ani Yoshev. I'm sitting, I'm dwelling. And that's where Philip is right now. He's dwelling in peace. And we all long for that. We want shalom more than anything else in our lives. I know when I don't have it, let me tell you, I make everyone around me miserable. So I do everything that I possibly can to turn that around as fast as I can, to try to find ways to live in peace with myself and then with my neighbor, my family. And it's not always easy. So it was a very, very powerful parasha this week. Any comments?
Well, it, there's not much I can add because it's almost like this parasha is like um the foundation of everything,
Yeah.
and everything about it, even about Amalek and about everything, it's unfolding like a saga. We read it and we see it in a specific time, but we're living it now. I find we're living history in my life more intensely than I've ever felt I've or lived it before. I bumped into a man at the bus stop yesterday, a Jewish man, and we just started to talk about different things, how awful the world is, blah, 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 without getting specific. but his awful was not my awful. And then like when he said awful, I wasn't sure where he was going. And then he comes out about Trump, what's happening. And I said, I don't understand. He's done more than anybody else. We didn't get into too much detail, but that was sort of the end of that. And it made me think that everyone now is almost blindly following the narrative of the world because, yeah, Trump could be, there's so many things. He's just a man. But there, in the past when I knew Trump, it was just a man, has so much money, funny hair, an ego the size of a colossal thing. And yeah, these things are true. But so now everyone is just following everyone else, and it's so scary.
Not everyone else. The
No,
left
no, they're following
folks,
the left. What I meant is they're following the narrative that's happening now in the world,
right.
without really looking at it or seeing it. Um, like how many Jewish people do they know? Like you said, he brought the capital back to Jerusalem. No other president or other person in the world, with all the negotiations and everything that's happened, he just did it. And what I don't understand is how, especially the Jewish community, a lot of some do recognize it, a lot do, but how could so many not even see that? It's so
Yeah.
simple. He just,
Yeah.
anyway, we are history. It's unfolding right before us now.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about uh, what was I going to say here? A little,
But it's a little bit, it reminds me of imagine Mauricio, if if a whole bunch of people were standing outside your house and for some reason, they just hated you. They couldn't stand you and your family. And they took fire bombs and like, these little Molotov cocktails and grenades and stones, and they were throwing them at your house. And then people said, oh, it's okay. Just let them come in, let them be there. Here is a man who's seeing the truth for what it is that the past presidents have allowed in, although some of them did close borders too, but not like the last one. The last one was horrible, and allowed everybody in. And we're supposed to allow anyone into our space without rule of law. They want chaos to rule. And when chaos rules, it creates anxiety. It's just like you spoke about last week. And and we're supposed to just sit back and say, oh, okay, forget what happened on October 2nd, 7th. It's not that we need to put it up on a pedestal or like constantly remember, but we have to look at why these things keep happening to us. What is our part in it? Like I said, the two-sided coin of good and evil. There's a reason for both.
yeah, yeah. It's very hard to stay calm and in these times and not to, people are just losing families and letting go of families and mothers and fathers because of ideology.
No,
It's
it's happening in
sickening.
my own. It's happening in my own family.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's terrible that
No.
that I lost a dear friend who's not like this. I don't get it. I hope one day she
Yeah.
changes her mind. What on earth? I've known her for like, let me see, 50, I think 50 years.
Yeah.
And I cannot believe that because of what I feel about the whole thing with Gaza and Israel, she's just boom. I'm written out of her book of life.
But more than that, I get insulted as if I'm stupid. I have no brains. I can't
Yeah,
think. I'm brainwashed.
yeah,
That's, what I'm accused of, and it's very sad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mauricio.
Poor
Yeah.
Mauricio is
Um,
so tired.
no, right now my eyes is like moving, so I don't know. Probably I need to rest or sleep. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, well, regarding this project, I heard from the middle of the service, but yeah, I had the time to read before. Um, and it's interesting that Yitro um, it's it's interesting that the 10 words are mentioned in the portion that is for Yitro, who is a non-Jew person. Okay, so that talks about the universality of the Torah.
Yes.
Okay, and
By the
these
way,
principles.
by the way, I added that to the message, which I didn't send in the one I sent to
Yeah,
you, because why wasn't it chosen? Why wasn't it spoken about in Leviticus when they chose the Levitical priest, the Hebrew priest? But it's spoken up here, a Gentile priest. Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's amazing. In second, how God chose Yitro to give an advice to Moshe.
Right.
I mean, that's another very deep thing because Moses is the higher or highest person for Judaism,
Yeah.
and he's receiving advice from Yitro, who is a Gentile.
Yeah.
Okay, so the rabbinical teachers will say, "Oh no, he converted first,"
Right.
but at the end, the Torah doesn't say that.
No. And
It's
where
just
where
that
would
he
he have,
believed.
where would he have converted? Where?
Yeah,
Which school of thought?
yeah,
Yeah.
that. So that's a fantasy, but
Yeah.
that is trying to show that Judaism is on top level for other religions and from other kind of people.
Right.
And God said, "Mine is the earth and everything that is inside of it." So, um, so you know, the point is the Chitro uh, is the one who 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 saves or keeps safe, I would say, uh, the woman of Moses and the children of Moses. Okay,
Right.
so to whom you will give your spouse and you give your kids, okay, to keep them safe.
Right. To someone you
Well,
trust.
to someone you really trust,
Right.
someone who is confident, and someone who is responsible, someone who has the wisdom,
Right.
etc., to keep them safe.
Right.
And now Moses is trusting
Right.
on Jethro. Okay, so at the end, the teaching here is very simple. There are good people, not just in Israel.
Right.
Okay, there are good people around the whole world,
Right.
and that's something that we need to open more. Okay, as persons who believe in the God of the Torah. Okay, not to say, oh, just me and just me, just me. No, no, we are not better, as you said, pride you to be Jewish. No, that's an invention.
Right.
Okay, that is to say, like, pride to be gay. Okay,
Right.
so
When you have that
To say what?
so
Sorry?
that
gay pride.
Oh, right, right, right.
yeah, yeah, so that there is nothing to be proud. Okay, we have a responsibility.
Right.
Okay, instead to be proud,
Right.
we need to be responsible for the calling and you
And
know
humble.
the role that God gave us.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then also you know the for me, you know all Israel, even Moses, they witness, okay, with their own eyes, with their own feelings, with with all the senses. They hear, they eat, they they have an experience beyond the spirituality. They have a physical also experience with God.
Right.
They can show how God destroyed the you know the Egyptians, how God saved them from lack of water in the desert, how they were fed, etc. And for me, that's probably why God chose to put Yitro on a pedestal, okay? Because it says very clear, not even he hears from Moses at the first moment, because when we start to read this portion, it seems that he heard from other persons, okay, from that they said, "Oh, have you heard?" Probably traders,
Right.
probably persons who were not Israelites, uh, and he hears, and then he said, "Oh, there is no. I believe in this God." Okay, so in that something that for God it's a merit, okay, because he believed for what he hears,
Like
not
Abraham.
for what he witnessed.
Right.
Okay,
Like Abram.
yeah, like Abraham. But he between Abraham and Jethro,
Abram heard.
Abraham
Yeah.
heard the voice from God.
Yeah.
But here in Yitro, he didn't hear the voice of God.
Right. Right.
Okay. So, but for what he hears, he believed and he made an expression. Okay. And uh, so for that reason, probably in the Brit Hadashah New Testament, I can remember, I think it was Paul, it was Rav Shaul who said uh, the, that those who were not witness, okay, they are not better, but but they are have a bigger merit, okay? Why? Because I believe what you said, what you experienced, and now I follow this God, okay, without having a close experience. You
Right.
know, I remember that today a lot of people used to believe in God because they put these trials. Oh God, I will believe in you if you help me in this financial problem, or if you save me from this I don't know, uh,
Testing.
probably testing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that is Meribah, and that is, as you mentioned, okay. So people is constantly trying to put God in a testing,
Right.
okay, and I will decide if I believe or I will not believe.
Imagine.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that is something that you know is not necessary. What else do you want to see? I really surprised, for example, when I see that how the, for example, the planet is working
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I'm exciting about, oh, how it could be that in this system, solar system, for example, there is only life in in this planet,
Right. That we know.
in that we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, a conscious life.
Right.
That's incredible, and people is fighting against one each other for what they believe in their
Yeah.
gods,
Yeah.
in the just a creation. just the sky, just the oceans, is giving a testimony that there is a one God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I would like to
In,
come. I would like to come to
yeah,
your ocean to give testimony.
yeah,
I want to go
yeah,
visit.
yeah, yeah. You're welcome here. And you know, that's something that humankind uh is you know daring God is like, oh, I am better than God, and I decide if I believe or I will not believe. So uh, that's probably the first commandment is, I am the God, okay, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.
Right.
In just the commandment is a sentence to believe without uh, any highlight point to say, oh, I will believe if, okay, any condition.
Right.
Besides, God do not need that we believe in Him. And that's another mistake from people. It's like, I will give the favor to God. No, God doesn't need our believings. Okay. We need Him.
I know, but
That's the point.
I heard an Orthodox rabbi once say that uh, God cannot exist without us, without the Jews. We can't
No,
exist without him, and he can't exist without us. Well, maybe they're God. Maybe they're, the one that they made him into being.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Imagine before the creation, God existed.
Yeah. That's impossible to understand. Impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without any conscience
With
exist.
no beginning, no
He
end.
existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no beginning, no end.
Yeah.
That's it. He exists.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Um, so um, that is something that probably humanity, and now Yitro is doing these kind of things. And third, Yitro is the first person to pronounce these words, Baruch atah Adonai.
Wow.
Okay,
Amazing, eh?
imagine, yeah,
Wow.
how it
Wow.
could be possible that a pagan a priest is pronouncing these words
Yeah.
that for Judaism is one of the highest pronouncing
Right.
sentences.
Yeah.
In and you know, is like, for example, the first woman who praised God was uh, is the daughter of the spouse of the mother of Yehuda, okay, Leah, okay, a woman. Oh, so that is to teach us as a man, okay, that sometimes we're trying to say we are better, we keep the commandment. We no, it's to give us a little bit of
Humility.
humility.
Yeah.
Yeah. In at the end, um, just to say, it's like there are not really 10 commandments. Okay, there are 10 sentences. Because I used to I used to believe in the 10 Commandments when I was kid in a Christian school. And when you compare the 10 Commandments of Christianity, are not the same as the Torah teaches.
That's
Okay.
why I said let's put back the original 10 because they've
Yeah.
changed them. Yeah.
Yeah, they've changed.
Yeah.
When I came to this congregation, I learned that because, for example, things like the first commandment doesn't exist in Christianity. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt.
Right.
Okay.
No.
So and things like that, and it's interesting because people is trying to understand the 10 sentences instead 10 commandments. Like and that's something that we need to teach people. Okay, because that's something sometimes I deal with. Okay, for example, even don't kill.
Right.
Okay,
Doesn't say that.
doesn't say that don't kill.
Don't commit murder,
Okay,
premeditated murder.
premeditated murder.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because he formed an army.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and things like that. So that's something that we need to learn. Okay, and also to teach next generation, because that's how the truth is twisted.
Right.
Okay, and and also um you know then at the end also it's interesting that in this portion the sometimes it's like I don't know what happened. Probably the point is that God sometimes wants that we hear and then we act.
Yes. Or is it the other way? We act and
In
hear.
this portion,
Yes.
people said, we will do
And we will
and
obey.
then we will obey.
Right.
I've been thinking about it because in Judaism, they praise these words. Okay.
Mm.
They praise the words, we will do and then we will obey.
Right.
Because by doing, we will understand.
Right.
But the problem of Israel is that they skip, okay, the first thing we will hear. So in they are not saying explicit, okay,
Right.
but it's very clear when you read the whole text that Israel doesn't want to hear. Okay. Because even they said to Moses, Moses, go here and tell us the words of the Creator. Okay.
Right.
So it sometimes happened to me, honestly, and not in religious thing or spiritual things. No. I in daily life, for example, sometimes I haven't finished to hear what people is telling me when I'm doing the things. Okay.
That's ADHD. I do that all the time. I
Yeah.
I'm always joking that I jump off a cliff and then afterwards I say, by the way, how high is it?
Yeah. And that's a problem
Yeah.
because that is the desire of Israel,
Yeah.
but it's not a commandment of God.
Uh,
God never commanded them do and then obey. What God is constantly saying in the whole Torah, hear, Shema, Shema,
right.
Shema.
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
It's true. We said it. He didn't say it to us. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did we
In
was it a couple of times ago we're talking about do do and then you do and you act like you hear like you
He's just explaining it. It's
no, that's what I'm trying to understand. What
yeah.
if I understand right is when you do it, you learn by doing it. So like
yes.
but that could quickly like I know people who think they're being righteous by doing certain things, but they're doing very shallow things. So I know you don't mean that, but it's for example, just you don't have to hear not to steal. You just don't steal and it becomes part of you when you do something. It becomes part of you.
But it starts with the hearing of it.
Okay, but I remember,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, for
okay.
example, okay, I made a lot of mistakes because I started doing and then hearing and then obeying, okay, because I don't hear the instructions of people. I usually don't. And that carries me a lot of problems, okay,
Me too. Yeah.
because, you know, that's probably, I'm talking about a very, a border of a line that is almost invisible, okay? But for example, imagine, okay, why, for example, Muslims, they start to kill a lot of people because they are doing and not really obeying, okay? Because it's like, oh, I'm gonna kill this person, and then I will understand why it's correct to kill. Or, for example, another kind of person who starts, for example, in Christianity, there's a lot of people also who first don't hear what happened and they judge, so they act first.
Right.
And then I will understand why. I remember, okay, for example, I have a cousin who she lives in Germany, and I remember she visited us when I was killed. Okay, and she came with the his couple, and they were married, and and she said me like 2000 probably year. She said, I'm gonna divorce from him. Okay. And I remember that instead to hear and ask her, okay, why you are divorcing? Because for me it was very clear and straight, black and white. Okay. When once you get married, you cannot divorce. Okay.
Yeah. You make a good Catholic.
Yeah. And because if not, you will go to hell,
Yes.
okay, and we will suffer the whole eternity.
Right.
Okay, so for me there is no any sense that uh to divorce,
Right.
even if your husband or your wife uh, is doing things that are wrong.
Yeah.
You can go to the church, they convert, and you can keep the whole life happy. Okay,
Right.
that was my thought. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
and probably many persons thinks as I thought,
Yeah.
and that's right. Eh, eh, so when she said, I'm gonna divorce, I acted without uh, mercy.
Right. Mm.
Okay, I acted defending the word of God.
Right. Right.
And I said, okay, why you are divorcing? That's not good, you know. And I remember I caught that relation at that moment.
Mm.
That was horrible from my side. Okay. Later, I understood. Then I tried to talk to her and things like that, but she already had. I hurt the heart of her.
Right.
And yes, we have a relationship today, not as used to be,
Right.
but today is very cold. But I understand that was my mistake.
Right.
Okay. Uh, But that's the problem, for example, to make, and then we will obey.
Right.
Because God, when you hear his voice, what he could, what I could hear from here, from God. Mauricio, have mercy, ask her how she feels. If she feels alone, support her, you know, instead to act, to defend God's honor. And then I remember that for me was a revelation that comes from Rabbi Percy. Once on a Tuesday tertulia, he said, you know, the things that God you need will not separate. But the question is, do do God made them husband and wife,
Right, right.
or they decided to
Yeah.
be to be to be together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even he said, yeah, you can go to the altar, no matter what religion is. But the question is, did God unite them? Did God approve that?
Right.
So that really killed a sacred bull, okay,
Right.
for me. Because and on that moment, I remember my posing in how I acted against her. I asked pardon to God, honestly. And you know, um, but the problem is when the that is good to act and obey. For example, uh, God says things that probably we love love your God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. For example, okay, when you start to love your neighbor, even though you don't want to love that person, then you start to realize why God, by doing, is telling you to love him or to love her. Okay, and and then you start to see that person probably with hesed, with kindness, and you start to understand why that person has this behavior against me. Okay, um, but but that's an example about doing, and by doing we will understand why. Okay, but uh, but the but the very first thing is to hear. Okay,
Right. Right.
to hear, to hear, because if we don't listen,
Yeah.
we will listen to the pastor, we will listen to the rabbi, we will listen to the imam, I don't know, and then we will act wrongly. Okay, and probably that is why there's a lot of religions or holy wars in the
Right.
world.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like you said, like I said also, there's the physical Amalek and the spiritual Amalek. There's the physical and the spiritual that we have to deal with together. And which is the right one? How do we know? We believe here that it's comes from God's words. And by
Yeah,
listening, you're right. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, here first.
and you know, Yitro believe for what he hears, and that's a teaching.
Yeah.
Okay,
Amazing.
and then Moses relate what happened, and then he praised God.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Right.
now I know this God is higher than other gods.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
It reminds me of
that's here's.
right. It reminds me of Eliezer, who Abraham heard, but he brought the souls that he made with him when he left. So he spoke to these other people about what God told him, and they believed. And when Eliezer saw how God had had prepared the way for him to bring back a wife for for Isaac, I don't know if it was Eliezer or whoever his servant was, Abram's servant. Then so it's the same type of thing. We see the same patterns, only they seem to increase in over the ages. Things repeat themselves. Yeah. Well, that was excellent. Good message. I like that. I'm happy. Now, may we be able to make a small dent in our worlds with what we learn each and every week, and may those around us. I pray that those around us that we could be a light to them, and show them a better way because we really need a better way right now. So thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, Miriam, for your input. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for our service. And I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom.
and
Shabbat shalom.
a wonderful day.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.